Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Charity Chart Show. This is Grayson Harris, and today we are joined by Jen Rifkin. She is the executive director of the Volo Kids Foundation, all about increasing access to play for kids across the United States. Jen, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. Good morning
Yeah,
and happy Friday.
bright and early on this Friday morning. But
Well, it
thanks
is
again for
bright and
coming
sunny.
on. And well, tell me a little bit about what Volo Kids kind of mission is. Right, I explained, high level. It's all about kind of increasing access because I think there was this big problem you all identified that I think about 1.3 or so million kids are not as active in youth sports as they have been in previous years. What is up with that?
There's just so many things that stand in the way, and we realize the benefit of sports. So I'll start from the beginning to talk about how we grew into where we are today. And I'm here in Baltimore on this sunny, a little bit humid day, but Volo Kids started here in Baltimore in 2015, and at the time, the city of Baltimore, which I should say is not unique to Baltimore and not unique to 2015, was dealing with a lot of racial tension across the city, and we were really looking for ways to heal the community from within. What can we do to just be a bright spot in everybody's day and give the opportunity for kids specifically to come and get together and just have a good time and not think about everything that's going on in the world. So our founder, Giovanni Marcantoni, worked with local government in Baltimore at the time. He was working directly with Brandon Scott, who's now our mayor. And they came up with this idea for free youth sports. And the really beautiful thing about that offering and that first flag football program in East Baltimore that's now grown across the country is that they really just wanted to capitalize on what youth sports are and the really awesome things that sports offer kids both on and off the field. Like you and I know, sports is a great opportunity to make friends and practice social skills. Sports helps you learn how to lead, how to win. It helps you learn how to lose too. And it's, as you said, there's so many less kids playing now, and we see the barriers that stand in the way, the financial barriers, gender barriers, language, race. So many barriers are standing in the way. So we're just trying to work with local communities to figure out how can we combat these barriers and just get kids running around and, goofing off and playing sports.
That's incredible. And speaking of that, your kind of origin and the way that you kind of got involved with the organization is actually on the coach side. Is that correct?
Yes. So I started with the organization in an official capacity full time in 2018. But before that, I was a volunteer coach. At the time, I was teaching in Baltimore, and I just wanted to find more ways to give back to the community and get involved with the kids. And I quickly found that the impact that I could have through volunteering with this organization was at times more than the impact that I could have in my classroom. Teachers are working really, really hard. Give it to all the teachers these days because they're going above and beyond as always. And so that brought me to Volo Kids and over the years I went from a volunteer coach to 2018 I started full time in Baltimore and helped grow the organization here in the city. And then, somewhere during COVID, I transitioned over to the national team and started focusing on expanding our presence across the country and really meeting the needs of communities all over. And now here I am today.
That's amazing. Can you tell me a little bit about the actual structure? How does Volo Kids actually operate? You mentioned kind of expanding nationally. I know that you all have a presence in, I think, over 12 states. What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. So it all boils down to the people. We lean on, there's an adage that I always attribute to our first executive director, although I do know somebody else said it. But if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. We really lean on the communities that we're in for coaches, for staff, for everything to make what we're doing possible. And it makes expanding and scaling at a rapid pace really possible. Each of the markets that we work in has a dedicated full-time leader that's in charge of overseeing all the operations, all the community impact, everything that goes into making sure that the kids are getting the quality program that they need and deserve. And from there, they oversee the little army of volunteers that we have that are ensuring that kids are having a good time on the field and learning. And, it truly all boils down to the people. It's what's made our expansion possible and super scalable, and they're so in touch with the community too and they care so much. I'm so unbelievably grateful for everybody that works and volunteers with us because they come up with all the ideas for here's what we need here in LA now. And,
Mm.
we just launched in Miami here's where the kids really don't have anything. Here's where you can go. So it's been really an awesome journey.
And you have that really great history on the program side before stepping into the executive director. For our audience, I want to give full context into just how expansive some of these programs are. Just in Baltimore, which is kind of where you're at, right? There's soccer, basketball, dance, volleyball, dodgeball, flag football, tennis, kickball. It really is an exhaustive list. And I'm sure every city may not start at that full kind of extent and capacity. But kind of going back to your days, managing that national program side, how was it in terms of keeping, all of this organized and really the structure of all of these different youth sports programs?
Well, the cool thing is we've really kind of worked hard to figure out what's the special sauce and formula to each of our programs, and we figured out what structure can really lend to kids having a good time and learning, but still having fun. And how can we do that in an efficient manner so that it's not a huge load on our employees or volunteers, but it's still awesome for the kids and it's scalable. So we really did lean into the operations, and I know that anybody from a nonprofit listening right now, it's programming and operations for sure isn't the only bucket in a nonprofit, but it's such a core and important part of what we do, making sure that our operations are solid and sound so that we can scale and just kind of replicate almost like cookie cutters. And it also gives us the opportunity to flex a little bit depending on the community and the sport and the need. We can say, well, we have this really good foundation of a program. It's got this 6-week structure and it has X, Y, and Z ingredients, and we can take that and kind of place it anywhere and add sprinkles on top, and it'll still be cool.
That's amazing. Well, you mentioned this briefly in your answer, right? But like adapting to the community's needs. I'm sure that the community of Miami versus the community of Baltimore is kind of pretty different, right? In terms of culture, what sports are popular, and really what the youth need within that. Whenever you're going into a new city, how are you establishing these connections with local community leaders and really starting to understand how should we shape this program for this new city that we're going into?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and you're incredibly right. The communities where we play are completely different. They have different interests, and they have different needs and different barriers that they're dealing with too. And that makes this really fun, embracing the differences. But I think the biggest thing for us in the communities is building trust. What we don't want to do is show up in a community and say, we know exactly what you need. We're here to fix everything, and say, because it's just not true. So, we go in and we try to understand the landscape. We start attending things like events, community meetings. We talk to schools and local government so that we can learn where the need is and where we can plug in. We don't have to force ourselves, or we don't even want to force ourselves into a community and just, take a picture and say, we did it. And then, so we really try to build those relationships and, find like-minded organizations and individuals that can help steer the way, and we can help them along the way as well.
Whenever you're coming into a new city, is it oftentimes like another nonprofit, a local municipality that actually reaches out to you and is like, "Hey, we're seeing what you're doing in our neighboring city, and it looks really interesting. What would it look like to have you in our city?" Is that generally how it's going, or is it more of y'all actually kind of reaching out?
It's kind of a mixed bag, and it depends on the market, the location. It depends on a lot of things. I can confidently say that not a single city has had the same exact blueprint for a launch, but we're taking the same formula for programming and the same, guiding star that at the end of the day, what we really want to do is unlock play for these kids. So while that remains the same, each entry has varied depending on, some cities haven't even heard of us yet, and that's okay. That's very normal. And some cities have, or they've seen what we've done with other organizations, so they want to replicate that. And again, the really cool thing is because we have this really solid operational base and support system of humans, we can flex and meet the needs of the community. But truly, every city is different, which again is what makes it so awesome.
That's awesome. And, you know, we talked a little bit about scaling nationally and kind of the role on the programmatic side that's come with. But on the other side of that is really the funding, right? As
Yes.
you're looking to expand, the
Yep.
the funding constraints are one of the biggest challenges. And as you've kind of transitioned more into that role of executive director, I'm sure that's a lot more of what your day-to-day has been filled with.
Sure is.
How has that been coming from the programmatic side? It's something that we see in the nonprofit space a lot, and I've seen that leaders can oftentimes more authentically speak to their donor base because they have that wealth of experience. Is that something that you've seen, and how has this transition been?
So it was a definite clear transition, and the fundraising world is obviously incredibly important to nonprofits, but it's different than the programming world. The one thing that I think remains the same is that principle of working together and really believing in what we're doing. So whether we're seeking out a partner that can help offset core costs, or we're applying to different grants, the same idea of, look, we know what we're doing and we believe in what we're doing, and we're going to let that guide the way. And we believe that you can help us do that, and we're here to help you do what you want to do in this city. It works, and it truly is. There is truly a community of people that want to help their communities and build from within. So that has helped. And truly, 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 partnership always helps. We do have a partner in Volo Sports, a separate company with the same founder. Volo Sports is a for-profit adult company, so adults get to come and play just like the kids. They pay to play, but they get to play everything from skee ball and bocce to flag football and soccer and lacrosse. It's very awesome. But a lot of times when we expand, we'll go into a market with Volo Sports and lean on that partnership too, and see how they can help us, because they really believe in helping the community as well. So it's truly a game of going together, no matter what. Programming, fundraising, whatever side of the house we're on, we're in it together.
And then can you elaborate a little bit? Because I know there's a big collaboration in terms of everything that Volo Sports does, especially in terms of the coaching and stuff like that with the Volo Kids side. From a kind of revenue perspective, how does that work? I think there's something on the back of each shirt. What tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So anybody that plays for Volo Sports, on the back of their shirt it says, "We play so the kids play free," and it's true. When adults come and play with Volo Sports, they register for the World Cup's coming, so everybody's registering for soccer. So they register for their soccer program. When they play and they wear that shirt, they know, hopefully and proudly, that a portion of the revenue that's brought in from them paying to play helps Volo support the Kids Foundation. So they help offset a lot of our core costs.
Mm.
I always say they're kind of like the foundation of the foundation, but it allows us to scale really sustainably, because we can really focus on bringing in funding ourselves that goes directly into the programming. And that's an incredibly, incredibly successful model, because everything that we bring in truly goes to the kids. And that's awesome. And then we have all these adults that know that they're playing and it's making a difference in their community, and they can come volunteer as well. And that's awesome. So they could even further their impact. And the kids adore the players, because to them, and I remember this from a teacher, we're like old adults, but they're like, they must be professional soccer players. Look at them. It's amazing. And it's just very, very cool to be passionate about a sport and share that with a kid and build that mentorship and have a kid look up to you so much. So, and our volunteers that play with Volo get to play for free. So that's very awesome. And
That's
it all
awesome.
works together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very symbiotic. I like it a
Yes.
lot. And then I guess, as we're looking to the rest of the year, the future, what kind of I think you're coming up on 3 years in this role. What has you excited, as we're looking to what Volo Kids is bringing to the rest of the United States?
Well, I've seen the difference. That I'm gonna tell a story that I tell all the time, and it's kind of a goofy story, but going back to COVID and the pandemic, when we first launched in Baltimore coming out of the pandemic, I remember being really we thought about everything. We reserved a field that had like 3 whole fields as part of the permit. So we had the kids super spread out, we had masks, we had everything that we needed. And I was very nervous. I was thinking, I know we're making sure the kids are safe, but are we doing what we need to do to still provide the program that they deserve? And that first day it was soccer, and I remember the kids were just like they were like rolling around almost like the soccer balls themselves. And I don't know how much dribbling they learned that day, or any actual basic soccer skill, but I know for sure that they had a good time. They it was so clear how badly they wanted to interact with their peers again and just be outside and run around and be kids and learn from that experience. And I think about that really frequently today in my role, because, I think about, well, we want to expand here now. And, the, the world is a kind of funny place sometimes. And, there's all these implications right now that sometimes make it hard to operate as a nonprofit or grow. But
Mhm.
I think about that moment. So when I think about the future, I'm like, at the end of the day, every day that I come to work, I know that I am working alongside a bunch of people that are working just as hard as I am to make sure that some kid out there is rolling around themselves like a soccer ball, but having like such a memorable core memory time. So, the future here is the more I can make that possible, the more kids we can make that possible for, the better. So I'm just going to do as much as I can to keep making that possible. So eventually we'll just have a million kids rolling around like soccer balls.
Your mission
It'll
statement.
be fun for some.
That story made me think, because y'all have been operating now, for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Have you interacted with some of these kids that have grown up through Volo Kids and maybe are now an adult, maybe now coming and volunteering? What does that look like, and what does that kind of make you feel?
Old, but it's actually really, really amazing. And it's something that we think about a lot because our age range, 5 to 13, if a kid starts when they're 5, we don't want them to get to 12 or 13 or whatever, and maybe they're ready to matriculate up into something a little bit more competitive. But we don't want to just like rip the opportunity away and be like, okay, good luck, So we do a lot to make sure they can return as junior volunteers or, stay in touch with the families or do whatever we can do so that they know that they're part of the Volo Kids family. And just because their time as a player with Volo Kids might be coming towards an end doesn't mean that the relationships that they've made are ending. And that's where the people that are running the local markets and our volunteers really play a big role because they build those relationships and those relationships last. And I hear, frequently I hear our coaches and our staff talking about the kids and the families and using everybody's name. They know everybody, and it's a good feeling to know, okay, this is a real community they've built within this
Mm.
community. So it's very cool.
And getting to kinda see that grow up too, and then
Yeah.
graduate and start doing more
Yeah.
competitive sports. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really awesome, and they sometimes will, like, especially if they have younger siblings, they'll stop back by and be like, "I did this," and it's really cool, and we always want them to come back as junior volunteers and volunteers. Again, the kids, especially at younger ages, older kids are just the coolest thing on planet Earth, so they'll learn more or be more receptive to, coming out of their shell or turning a bad day around,
Mm.
So we love when older friends come back.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, a moment ago, you mentioned, some of the challenges, right, that nonprofits have been facing in
Mhm,
recent years.
mhm.
What what has that looked like for you, and kinda how is navigating that been, especially in terms of some of the grant side? Has that really impacted the organization recently?
Yeah, it's had a bit of an effect. The funding landscape is ever evolving and I could say that sentence any year in the history of years in fundraising.
Yeah.
But this is a particularly hard time to fundraise. I think there's not as much money to go around right now, and there's still a lot of nonprofits, and everybody's doing an equally amazing job. So there's a lot of people vying for the same pool of money. And then there's I think the need for nonprofit services fluctuates as always. I think it's higher than normal right now.
Yeah.
And, so, you got more of a need, more demand, less supply, and less funding to support the supply. So this really truly is a time where we wanna lean on our friends for support, keep building those relationships with individuals to help, and just get really creative to see how we can make this work. Because at the end of the day, we know we gotta figure out something to make this work. So we're gonna try one thing. If that doesn't work, pivot, try something else, and then just keep going until we, find what works.
What are you seeing working right now? What has been maybe some lessons that you have been able to take out of this, surrounding, being adaptable?
I think that while grants continue to be more and more competitive, reasonably so and understandably so, I think that personal interaction really works. The more people that we have that are supporting what Volo Kids is doing and spreading the word about what Volo Kids is doing, the more opportunities we have to open the door to a new relationship that could be a funding relationship, that could be the relationship that says, oh, we can support this. We believe in this. We can sponsor this, or we can donate, X, Y, and Z services or materials to, offset something so that you can serve more kids. So all our coaches, our volunteers, the Volo players, the more people that go out and just talk about the kids, the better. And that's really worked for us.
That's incredible. And then Jen, how can our audience get involved with Volo Kids, either within their local community or maybe if there's not a current, establishment, there, what does that look like, outside of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, truly in the most nonprofit way possible, anything helps. So, if you have Volo Kids in your community and you want to coach, come coach, or you just want to check it out and learn more and see what it's all about, come learn more. If you want to support on a funding side, we have fundraising boards across the country. We have a governance board. There's all kinds of ways to give back, even if it's like I don't have a stable enough schedule to come coach every week, but I'm really into soccer and would love to help write curriculum virtually or come be a photographer one day. Everything can help. Anybody can get involved. And, anybody can also go and play with Volo Sports and as that helps us too. So the best place to find things is our website, volokids.org. And there's a million ways you can give back to your community and help with Volo Kids.
Jen, thank you so much for coming on today. I've really enjoyed this conversation, learning more about what you're up to and really spreading this mission of play right
Yeah.
across the United States.
Yeah, but thank you so much for having me. This was an awesome way to start a Friday talking about the kids and hoping to get everybody involved. So I'm grateful for you for having me on.